All right, welcome back to the In My Beach Boys Room podcast. This is a little bonus episode that we must do for the Phil Flows box set.
Yes.
So what you've heard is this Phil Flows box set's been doing well as far as
From what little that I've seen of the reviews and the news of the reviews, it's selling real well and it's getting reviewed just off the charts.
nice. Okay, so this is a little bonus episode. We still have plans for season 2. We are currently in the 70s room.
Yeah, we're in the 70s room, and I'm in the early 70s corner, which has all the sunflower and Surf's Up and now Feel Flow stuff.
And then, so what do I have behind me?
You've got late 76 and late 70s stuff behind you, and we'll be getting into that in the season 2.
Season 2, yeah, because we ended season 1 at the end of the 60s in the Carl Wilson episode, and then getting into the 70s in the next season. We'll see. We obviously are going to be planning that out and getting that out here soon. Don't really have a timeline yet, but the important thing is we had to come on for this little bonus episode for Feel Flows. And Matthew, you have a bunch of stuff you want to talk about on this on the music side, right?
Yeah, and also the packaging and everything. It's just.
But as far as the history, no, this is
no history. We're going to save the history for this era. There's a little tiny bit that has to be told for the context of a couple tunes today, but most of that's going to be saved for the first episode of the next season, which is, since have gone through the music exhaustively, won't have any of that discussion, but just focus on the history of this period.
Perfect. And speaking of music, let's talk real quick about that track that they just heard at the beginning of this podcast. So that's Feel Flows, the song, but you did the guitar and the violin on it, and I love that guitar that you did on there. And so you kind of explain to me exactly.
Oh, I tried to make one guitar part that had a little bit of the piano lines and bass lines, and
you kind of put
just
that all into the guitar part.
Yeah, just tried to hybridize it so it would be a little bit more there with just the guitar and the violin, but that was fun to do.
Yeah, that was cool. That may have been my favorite one that we do. And when we do those, or I should say when Matt does those, that's like we do that right after or right before an episode. It's really not planned.
It's kind of fun because it's kind of that one thing of, oh, wait a second, we need to what would be a good tune for this, and then we get to kind of just throw some paint real quick,
do a backing track with the guitar, and then you can come on and we do a video.
Do one live
violin.
Take,
yeah. And so if you hop onto YouTube, you can listen to the full version of that and watch the video. It's like I said, I have that little guitar part stuck in my head. So Instagram at Matthew Hart's Music,
YouTube stuff,
and then YouTube.
Matthew Hart's Music,
Matthew Hart's Music, and we are going to revamp our Patreon page for season 2. So don't worry about Patreon as of yet, because we're going to redo that one anyway. So
gotcha.
This, like you said, this is kind of a spontaneous
episode.
Yeah,
I did. So kind of touch base with everybody. We had some momentum and a lot of people listening, even though we're not making episodes.
Yeah. So
that's
hey,
cool.
Actually, we should welcome all the new listeners. Thank you for tuning in and checking out season 1, and let's get into this bonus podcast.
Well,
here.
First thing I want to do, we talked about being in the 70s room of my little Beach Boys sanctuary here, and I want to talk about some of the important items I've got here.
Which is the smallest room in the whole museum.
It is.
It's a little tight right now.
So anyway, one of my prized possessions here that I got, pretty recently, I think it was last Christmas, that's an original 1969 printing of that poster that's so associated with this era. I think it's the date on it says 1969, and a lot of some of the main photos in the beginning of the liners on Feel Flows are from this same photo session. So that's really cool. That's my birth year, and that's an original poster.
And this is the poster where they're sitting on, if people who are familiar with the Beach Boys memorabilia, they're sitting on the grass. They have like flowers, and then...
Yeah, Mike's got his white guru robe on, and
Carlos has a guitar.
And, they've all got the flowers. That's people that have fans have seen those pictures.
And then they're up in the like shadowy silhouette,
kind of in the clouds there. Yeah. And then I've got this Beach Boys. This is a songbook. Includes songs from Surf's Up and Sunflower. I've talked before about how some songbooks are just terrible. This has really good transcriptions in it. When I was learning to play piano in college, I found this book and learned to, Surf's Up Until I Die and some of those things out of here. But it's a cool book, and I need to get the binding fixed on it. But and we're going to get to the feel flow stuff. But the other thing we've got, and I'm just going to bait a little bit with this, is I'll take this off the wall for a second. Here is my Bruce Johnston signed copy of Sunflower, and we're going to tell the story at the end of this episode of how and how I got that signed. So
nice.
And so here is the 5 CD deluxe box set, and
so because for me and the other ignorant listeners, Feel Flows is it's the Sunflower album and the Surf Shop.
Yes, it's the period 1969 to 1971, and those 2 albums being made, and all of the extras and before and after time leading. So it's that era, but those 2 albums.
Okay.
And
carry on.
So yeah, it's got fantastic. The packaging is fantastic. Everything is done really well. The stock on the paper is really heavy. But like, here we go. There's another shot from that poster.
Oh, right.
Shot right there. That's the very first page. These liner notes are incredible. They're done by, Howie Adelson. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but I've seen him. He's written about them before. But these are really good. And I learned a lot of new stuff. I think he got some great current quotes and used old quotes from the guys, but it's really well done. I really love the liner note, but the pictures, just all of the packaging and the colors. There's some pictures I have not seen before. It's just there's the famous picture that was used on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine when they were featured in 1971. Brian in his bathrobe. Anyway, here's the 5 CDs back here. So you got the first 4 CDs have the Brother Records logo on the Warner Reprise, and then the bonus CD, it's cool. It's got a sunflower on it.
Nice.
Anyway, I saved the little sticker from the plastic too.
Got to. True collector.
So this is So here's the vinyl box set, and I got the colored vinyl. And yes, I have opened it, and yes, I did play some of the vinyl, and it sounds fantastic. And I know that's sacrilege to some of you.
Like people they don't play.
Just leave it. Sometimes leave it all sealed, and or there's some real
collection right there.
Yeah, right. Never been played, sort of thing.
It's like those people that would buy toys when I was a kid, but collect them and then never play with them. As a kid, I didn't understand. So, as a music lover, I also don't understand not wanting to listen to vinyl.
That's kind of like everything.
Unless you buy 2.
I use everything in this museum.
Yeah,
the instruments, the books. I listen to I got
an interactive
over
museum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then that's what I want it to be for when people come to
check it
see
out.
it. They could actually stay here and actually read
put on the record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
Cool.
Okay, but anyway, I want to show some of the cool stuff in here. Oh, number 1. So this is just basically a redundancy of what the liners that are in the 5 CD box, but it's packaged differently for the LP size. But this is an alternate photo from the front of the Sunflower album that they use here. But again, just fantastic quality in really, really, really cool packaging. Here's the original albums. Here's Sunflower is just exactly like it is. It originally had this gatefold. There's Brian's house. I was thinking about that picture I have in front of that house up on Bellagio. I'd need to try to find that someplace. But the thing I notice about this printing of the Sunflower is it's not as dark as my original printing of Sunflower.
Oh, interesting.
Now, Surf's Up comes as a gatefold too. Did not originally. And originally, this came in the LP sleeve, which is Parched Land.
Yeah, it's trippy.
And then the inside is the lyrics. And so what they did for the box set for this LP is they just did that to the gatefold right there. So, and then I can't remember, I think that, yep, the Surf's Up is the yellow vinyl.
Oh, that's cool.
And then the Sunflower's the blue. I guess we don't have to get that out. That's pretty much, oh, golly, no, there's a couple other things in here. Yeah, there was this extra picture, which is, I'm guessing,
had you seen this picture before?
No,
oh,
I had
cool.
not seen this picture of Brian. That's a sunflower picture, and this looks like that same period. Yeah, probably slightly after.
They're
but
sitting on a staircase.
I know it's the same period. That's funny. But I'm wondering if this is somewhere around Brian's house. I'm probably not. Really cool picture. I'm going to get that framed too.
Yeah, that one's cool. Yeah, sitting on a staircase,
So,
Brian sitting in the little.
That's all the goodies
wall
that
cutout.
came in the 4 LP colored box set, and I got that. I knew I was gonna get the colored one because that's basically it's just for fun, you know.
Yeah.
I've got everything is on the 5 CD deluxe set, but I'll bet there's a lot of guys like me that got
They gotta get all
CD
this stuff.
and a vinyl
For sure.
version, you know. So, but anyway, that kind of describes everything.
That's the physical.
over.
Yeah, the physical product. So what are we starting with? What the actual content of the box set?
Well, first of all, the packaging on that stuff is so amazing. It makes me want that same thing for Sunshine Tomorrow. Everything they did from '67 in the Wake the World sessions. And
Wait, so how many box sets have they released like this?
like this, well, there's been a whole one on Pet Sounds. There's the Smile sessions in 2011.
Okay, yeah, and I've seen
won
that
a
one,
Grammy.
yeah.
The Mark and Alan won a Grammy for that one, and there's been a few other box sets through the years, include the Made in California one that's kind of comprehensive. But as far as box sets that have been made about specific periods, they've been doing releases on some of the other eras, but haven't done
Like era, like I see what you're
they haven't
saying.
had the physical. The Pet Sounds had all the books and
Sure.
everything. The Smile thing had a big package with it. This does too. I wish they would go back and do the Sunshine Tomorrow and Wake the World, and I think I Can Hear Music is what they call '69. But that whole period, and just combine it into one and do the whole physical box with the goodies in it too.
Gotcha.
Because this is done so well.
Nice.
And so now
Okay.
I'll shut up about the packaging. But what is in it? Man, first of all, Alan Boyd and Mark Lynette. We are so lucky as Beach Boy fans to have those guys. They've given us so much, and they have really outdone themselves. For people that don't know who they are, just briefly, Alan he really made the definitive documentary, I think, in 1998, Endless Harmony of the Beach Boys, besides being associated with countless other other documentaries and films. And then Mark Lynette has been involved with Brian since the late 80s when he started working on his solo record with him, and subsequently became in charge of remastering and mixing the entire old Beach Boys catalog.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon Alan was in there with them, and they've been doing this together now for 20 years.
Wow.
And they are good.
Yeah,
and
they've
this
gotten
time
good.
they've outdone themselves.
Just keep getting better, huh?
It's really great. I first heard the snippets for this thing on YouTube several months ago. They put out I can't remember how long it was, but I think it was 30 seconds of almost a lot of the tracks, if not all of them, and I was blown away by. So I knew right then, oh my gosh, there's a lot here I haven't heard because it hasn't been uncovered before.
Right.
And I knew it was gonna be thrilling, but now to hear the box set in its entirety and have all the context and the liners, and it's that and much more. It's amazing. I think of the work that goes into doing one of these projects and how many decisions they have to make. I mean, that's the paralyzing part of it for me. It's just like, man, and I guess, they've got quite a team, I guess, but those guys being at the helm, it's awesome. The new album mixes, like for instance, these are all real recent mixes, even of the original albums. I think is 2019 or 2020. They've made new,
like remastered.
Yes, the newest, best versions of the original thing, right? And those are incredible. Just putting on a set of headphones and checking that out is, you're just hearing things that you didn't hear before,
right? Right.
Even though it's the same mix, and the original mix is incredible, but the bonus tracks on this thing, which I've heard a lot of it before on bootlegs, but it was a very low quality, mixes were real iffy sometimes, but this is all, and Mark's the original, and he's kind of doing his own mixes on this, didn't have a template, but I love what he's done with this, and he brings so much, information, or he brings so much clarity to what's going on in both the track and the vocals. It's really, really, really good.
Cool.
And then the other two people I have to mention before we get into the meat of this thing is Steven Desper, the original engineer on these things, and Carl. Mm-hmm. Because Steve Desper, who started working with them, I think the Friends period in 1968, he was using cutting edge equipment for the time. They really had the newest of the new. And on the back of the original Sunflower album, there's a bit of saber rattling that's going on when they describe the microphones they're using and everything, and I remember seeing that for the first time, and it was strange to see that, but it's like, hey, we're letting you know that we're using the best equipment out there. And then the way that he mixed that was revolutionary. I mean, it's just, we're going to get into that, but he's a big part of this whole thing, this whole era, and both of these albums. And then, of course, Carl was right there, kind of guiding the whole thing. We mentioned how it had transitioned from Brian to him, even where Carl is now just not the live leader, but he's the leader in the studio, kind of the executive producer, even if the other guys are producing some of their own things and everything. Carl's now the kind of overseer and interpreting Brian's ideas in the studios. And so enough can't be said of them, so... Anyway, we can start getting right into
the music.
Yeah,
now that we got that background on who's behind this whole
thing
project.
This is just a small setup, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through and talk about the songs that are on Sunflower and Surf's Up. A lot of the box set is deconstructing those things.
Okay.
Right? So I'm not going to be redundant and talk about those things again, but as we talk about each track, especially if there's something that really stood out to me about the deconstruction, I'll mention it then. So
Perfect.
We don't do that. Then at the end of that process, we're going to go into the bonus tracks that are not part of either of those albums that I feel are important. I'm not going to mention them all.
Yeah.
And then they have a live section, which I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then I've just got some closing thoughts and talk about old Bruce.
Perfect. Okay, so what song is starting it out then?
Well, we're starting out with Sunflower. And we're first of all going to talk about the Sunflower album and the fact that all 6 Beach Boys, Brian, Dennis, Carl, Al, Mike, and Bruce, all heavily into this, and it's agreed that they all say that we were all doing that. We were all being collaborative and working with each other as much as we ever did.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so that's really neat. There's a lot of they all write, they all funny that a lot of them are singing the other guy's song. You know, like one of them will write one and say, "Hey, why don't you sing the lead vocal?" A lot of that's going on, and it always did go on in their career. But here it's a real democratic kind of shared feeling going on. But Brian had been through a little bit of a dark period, right?
Right.
Well, for Sunflower, they got him revitalized a little bit. Remember, most of this is done in his house, right below his bedroom.
Okay.
And he was there a lot of the time, but from the liners I'm reading, you know, sometimes he wasn't. Sometimes he'd just come down and give him a small idea and expect him to execute, you know, and then go back up and go to bed, you know.
Yeah.
But he was very, you can tell from all the session tapes and all the singing he's doing, and of course, you know, even the songs that he doesn't get writing credited on, I can hear his hand in some of the arrangements. Maybe not on Bruce's stuff, but especially Dennis's stuff and Carl's and Al's.
Yeah.
Mike's. Yeah. But he's helping out a lot here, and he's very, very involved, and that's another sad thing in a little bit, because when the album gets released on August 31st, 1970, worst performing album in Beach Boy history, lower than Friends, 151.
Ooh.
And I can't remember, I just saw it here recently, and I think it might have been in an article attached to this, but it really crushed Brian because he got in there and tried again. It's kind of like another Pet Sounds moment.
Right.
And then what? Nobody's listening. No. And so some people are pointing to this. No, it was after Sunflower where he really decided to, you know what? You know, and he does take a lot less of a role in Surf's Up after Sunflower. That, yeah. So it needs to be said, on Sunflower, we've got all 6 Beach Boys just pumping, mostly at his house, but they did record at a few other LA studios, but primarily it was at Brian's house up on Bellagio. So when I first got Sunflower, I was in college, and I was in Texas, and it was the re-release, I think in the early 90s. I remember coming home that night to where I was living, and put on headphones and put the CD in a Walkman.
Nice.
And I put that on, and immediately I was blown. The mix, the clarity, it didn't sound like any kind of Beach Boy music at all. It's like, what is this? There is an unorthodox feel, really funky. The beginning is really disorienting, but it's got like a kaleidoscopic mix, and it's so clear and deep too. And I remember thinking to myself, is this the Beach Boys? And then I start hearing voices on the choruses in a way that I've never been able to hear the voices this clearly, in the timbre of their voices like this. And at the same time I'm going, yeah, that's the same voices. I'm going, whoa, you know, this is incredibly different. It's a great Dennis tune. Okay. And funny, or not funny, but to me it's curious that, you know, Dennis got the opener on this one. It's, the more I look at the tune, it's a really great tune, and a great pop tune with a funky feel to start the album.
Totally.
Okay. Well, also on that one, of particular note, on the Deconstruction, the background vocals are just insane, and the way that they process them.
And that's what you're referring to, the box set. That's where you can hear that.
Yeah. You can, all of the album tracks are deconstructed in a few different ways, so the listener can go to so many different, you know, just the track, or just the vocals, or maybe the track with just the backing vocals. So you're just getting, cool. Yeah, every one of them.
Really deconstructed.
So, yeah.
Okay, so that's up on through.
Okay, next we have This Whole World, which is an famous Brian masterpiece. Man, when I was listening to it the very first time in college, I liken it to getting drunk on the music. I was punch drunk by the modulations in this thing. This song, it's a famously put together. It's just a brilliant, changes keys about 4 times, and I was going to have a guitar and do it, but I thought we can't get everything in this episode. Yeah. But it's a brilliant song in the first place. Carl's vocal has always been beautiful, but the deconstruction has several different versions. You get the acapella vocals on this one are just insane. Very good.
Awesome.
Very good.
Cool.
Add Some Music, which was the first single, I think, officially off Sunflower, and it sold. The single had something happened where the record company shipped a whole bunch of them to record stores, and so they counted it. Said, "Oh, this is the fastest selling single in our history." Well, they ended up taking a lot of them back or something like that. It was a false marker of where things to go. Then the album comes out and it's number 151. But anyway, this is the tune. It's a Brian and Mike tune. They wrote it with a friend, Joe Knott. Don't know who that is, and he just helped with the lyrics. But it's a pretty simple little tune. Mm-hmm. I like it. It's never been one of my all-time favorites, but it's a 180 degrees from this whole world.
Okay.
Then after that, we're staying in simple mode. Dennis does his little 12-bar blues, which has Got to Know the Woman, mm-hmm. which is about as basic as it can be. It's got some cool female backup vocalists on it that give it kind of a R&B flavor.
Nice.
There's a chord. He uses some really strange chords, unorthodox chords in the middle. That's typical Dennis. And this is one spot that when I was writing my notes last night, I go, I've never been able to make this work.
Oh, really?
It just seems like a couple of awkward moments in the middle of that thing. But anyway, next is Deirdre, which is a Bruce tune. And also, he credits Brian on this because I think part of the melody comes from an old song that was a couple years older from the Friends area called We're Together Again. But it's mainly a Bruce tune, and it's a Bruce production. I don't think this one was done at Brian's house, and it's got horns and strings on it. It's real kind of Broadway-like. A lot of Bruce's tunes on this record kind of almost have that sort of a feel to it, kind of bigger, kind of show tune almost.
Yeah.
Things. Bruce is fond of the Beatles tune Michelle, and in some ways this has a Michelle thing to the production, and then Tears in the Morning, which we get to, that's like the chords to Michelle. Anyway, that's Deirdre.
And then so as far as deconstruction on that in the box set, you said this one is a little more Broadway. So like are the horns, is all that deconstructed on there too?
No, they just have the track by itself pretty much, I think, with the backing vocals. Okay. I'll have to check that for sure. But the track is really nice by itself. Okay. And Bruce produced it.
Cool.
The last song on side one of Sunflower is It's About Time. And this is another one like Slip On Through, which opened it. And when I got this, is this the Beach Boys? It sounds like a Peter Gunn movie or something, but and then it's got some Latin percussion in it. It just sounds like Santana.
Interesting.
Just right out of the gate. And so my mind, when I was listening, I hadn't heard either Sunflower. I had heard Surf's Up, but not too much before that. It was just foreign territory to me, and I just had a tough time. Whoa, I didn't know they actually made music like, it was hip for the time, But this is it's credited to Dennis and Al and Carl and another guy named Bob Birchman. But this is, let's just say it surprised me. It's just another example. I think a lot of people would listen to that and not know it was the Beach Boys.
Sure.
I think side 2 starts with Tears in the Morning is another Bruce production. This one, while I was reading last night, it was done at Brian's house, but it's got strings on it too. There's a string arranger that did the strings on this one, and Deirdre and Our Sweet Love, which comes later in the album, and is Michael Colombier. I should just mention him because some people might think that Brian arranged the strings on those tunes, but that's not the case so he's the guy that's arranging that stuff on Tears in the Morning. Tears in the Morning, nice tune, but after Tears in the Morning is the kicker for me. All I Want to Do. I had never heard it when I first heard it, and I fell in love immediately. Funny story. My first wife, we were both going to college at the time, and she had very little exposure to the Beach Boys, but I got this re-release and showed her, a few songs on it. She would study constantly, and she would just play this, All I Want to Do and Forever, and then just back of it, just constantly on repeat, not hits or anything. These just kind of showing how it resonate. It's a deep song. Well, in the time since the release of it, when it, nobody thought anything of it when it came in, it's now considered one of the first, if not the first example of a genre they call dream pop now.
Oh.
And it is, man, it's
the first of its kind, huh?
It's, yeah, well, that's another one, you know what I mean? And I wouldn't even know what that genre is except for
I think I've heard it.
Yeah, and I know what they're alluding to, and now, I'm sure that Brian didn't think that when he was but he unwittingly made the first dream pop, and who better to make the first dream pop if that's what it is. It's the tune itself, I call it it's a 2/5 that shifts to bliss, man. It just has a kind of a simple 2/5 progression to open it up, and it hangs there for a while, but it does so many shifts that you just feel like you just get goosebumps, man. And, nice stuff. So I can't hang too long on every tune, but the deconstruction.
You're doing well. Hey, you're doing well. You're moving.
The deconstruction on this one is insane. I mean, I can't tell you everything. The backing vocals by themselves, the track with the backing vocals, and then there's an early track that they made in 1969, a demo of it, so there's lots of that on all these tracks, but this one especially. I mean, if I had to pick one moment, it's this. It just raises the hair on my arms and gets my whole body buzzing.
Yeah.
Anytime. It's just, right after that comes Dennis's signature piece of his whole career.
Yeah.
Forever. And I really feel like this song, Brian's music, it's his magic music. A lot of it is because of what I call polyphony he uses, where he smashes musical ideas together, and he taught his brothers to do that too. It's why they use interesting inversions in their piano chords, and it's a part of the magic. And Brian helped with this arrangement, but one of the things, I think it's just a great example of that polyphony, meaning that there's one thing going on. It's in the key of E flat, and Carl's playing it capoed, and I think I know what shapes he's playing, but he just goes, the beginning of it, starting in the beginning of the verse, he just goes 1 3 minor, 1 3 minor, and then 1, and then 3 minor, while the bass is doing a common descending line going down 1 7 6 5 4, and then and piano chords doing slightly things, and that the whole thing together is what makes it magical. It's knowing that those things all being done together is going to create this hair-raising dream pop. It's all of Brian music. That's all cool. Of the Wilson brother music is dream pop, really. And so I picked this tune out because of that, and also because it's really one of the ones where Brian and Dennis and Carl are they're all working on it. They're all singing on it, and you can kind of tell it's a brother thing.
Totally.
Working. So it's a real special tune. Okay, Our Sweet Love. I read in the liners that Al said it was one of those things that Brian hadn't finished, and him and Carl went and got it and salvaged it and put some more words to it, and then once they got it kind of revved up and ready to go, then of course Brian gets excited. Oh, okay, well, I'll come and help you finish it. Do a little singing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's credited to Brian, Carl, and Al. This one, the track by itself, I had never heard before, and it's just little things about the type of piano they use, or whoa, it just this one and the next one, which is called At My Window, when this is a Al and Brian tune that when I first heard it in college, I thought, this sounds like Kingston Trio, Raspberry Strawberries. Well, years later when I was reading in the book, Al was inspired to write by Kingston Trio's Raspberry Strawberries, and it's pretty evident in the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the first guy that figured it out, but
Yeah.
I already knew it, so that's kind of cool. But it's a beautiful tune, and the track on that one surprised me. There's just a like a 2 measure just stomping thing in the middle of each verse that's just dropped inward. Boom, 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 boom. It's just like, because the vocals cover up a lot of that on the record. It's just whoa, that was in there.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Again, Brian's music is so dense. His, it's a layer upon layer upon layer that never really fights with, but it's just such a mass. There's always so amazing to me. I've been listening to these albums, even though they came to me late, since the early 90s. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can hear so many new things on this box set is just another testament to him. And by the way, it's this work that they're doing is just insane. The singing that they're doing is the hardest that they've ever done. It's the most intricate. Mike's bass parts are some of the craziest. I've got a whole reevaluation of this period after hearing, it's brilliant stuff. And to think that it was sold so poorly.
And a reevaluation just from the box set?
Yeah.
What you've been able to hear on that?
Ever since I started hearing those snippets months ago, it was jarring, and I knew it was going to be. It really has made me. I knew it was great. I just didn't know it was this deep and great.
Right.
And there's one little thing that Mike does. He sings the lead on "All I Want to Do" because he co-wrote it with Brian, but he has a background part that's in there that's so cool. It's a suspended 4 thing for music nerds, but I would have dreamed that thing was in there. And every time it comes by on the set and I'm doing my research, it just, it's really nice. It's just among their best stuff. So the last song on the album is Cool, Cool Water, which is an old Smile remnant. It's an extension of the song that was going to be part of the Elements. They had fire, and it was going to be the water part. And the front of the track, the Sunflower track, is actually a wordless piece they actually lifted from Smile. They went in the vaults and said, okay, we'll use this on the front end of it. So it's got the Smile thing happening with it, right?
Okay.
But it's another dream pop thing. It's just it's very Beach Boys. It's a chantish.
Oh, okay.
Kind of, it's like one idea back and forth a lot musically, which is something that Brian kind of shifted into right about the Smile period. He started exploring some music like this that stayed on some basic changes for longer and explored the simpler changes in different ways. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Right? So that's the end of the Sunflower album.
That wraps up Sunflower. Mm-hmm. That was all the songs on Sunflower, or you just picked some?
We went through, I think, and mentioned at least every song.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And which is what I'm going to do with Surf's Up.
Same. Okay.
So Surf's Up, almost 1 year to the day. It's August 30th, 71. I think Sunflower is August 31st, 70. So it's exactly a year. But a lot of things had happened to the Beach Boys by the end of the Sunflower period, and with it tanking commercially, a lot of things had gone on, and this thing went to number 29 in the United States, which was as it says in the liners, a godsend. And it really
in terms of their career.
Yeah. And then they got a big feature in Rolling Stone magazine the same time, and it was
that picture.
Yes,
that picture was from. Got it.
And it really did jumpstart their career. And we'll talk more about that in just a couple of songs, but we'll talk about the first song first.
Okay,
it's called "Don't Go Near the Water," which they're starting to embrace themes, ecological themes,
Okay.
and more current type stuff, and it shows up on this Surf's Up album. Don't Go Near the Water is a tune by Mike and Al, and it's a cute little tune, and it's got some cool stuff in the deconstructions, but it's a nice album opener. The next song, Long Promised Road, is the first of two Carl masterpieces on this record, and just the two songs on the Surf's Up album that he wrote just ought to get him an award right there, because they're the two of his very best, and they're just fantastic. They're two of his earliest songs too, if not the first songs he wrote. But Jack Riley, we're going to talk about him. At the end of the Sunflower period, the Beach Boys changed management. A man named Nick Grillo was managing them, and Jack Riley came in. Make a long story short, he was younger, a little hipper, said, hey, you guys got to get rid of the white suits, and you got to, his new slogans were like, hey, the Beach Boys have changed more than you have.
Interesting.
So they're going through this ultra hip thing with management, and he is pretty hip and is a wordsmith himself, or is actually, one of the things he did was he met him. He's a radio DJ.
Okay.
And he wrote with all three Wilson brothers, but he wrote this and Feel Flows with Carl. And
he wrote a writer on actual.
Yes, he's actually the most of the lyrics, and that took these songs in a different direction.
So
and
he had influence on this album then.
Yes,
okay.
And he's actually singing.
So okay,
yeah. As a matter of fact, he's the lead singer on A Day in the Life of the Tree. We'll get into that later. But anyway, I needed to mention him starting with Long Promised Road. And I also wanted to take that little aside that I've talked about, the two major Beach Boy things that are going on this year with Feel Flows that just got released, and then the documentary about Brian, Long Promised Road. It's ironic that they're both Carl songs they used to title, a whole Beach Boys release, and then, Brian had nothing to do with the writing of Long Promised Road, and they're calling this new So I just,
that's
interesting. It's a great title for it, and especially, I guess, for what that documentary is about. But that's just kind of a little aside, and that it's Carl's two tunes that are getting the print here. So that's Long Promised Road. Then we've got Take a Load Off Your Feet, Pete. I think it's more from the Sunflower, or one that got left over from the Sunflower era, and a fun little song about, take good care of your feet, and mentions Birkenstocks, and actually it's got either Brian, I think it's Brian skipping around on the roof of his house, and part of the percussion is him skipping along. It's a fun little song, but kind of light.
Yeah.
After that is Bruce Johnston's, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of other people agree, his best Beach Boy work ever. It's called Disney Girls, and in parentheses 1957, and it's a song about nostalgia, like the 50s and Ozzie and Harriet, and things that already gotten deep, the Vietnam War and stuff, and he's yearning for those. But the music is really great, and the vocal arrangements are just phenomenal on the deconstructed stuff. You got to check that out. It's beautiful, beautiful song. It was a highlight, and it's done. It's on it's a live track on this album. They did that forever. They'd give Bruce a little spot where he could sing Disney Girls throughout the rest of their career. Still does, I think, sometimes.
Cool.
Okay, so that was Disney Girls. Then I think the end of side one is Student Demonstration Time. There's that thing.
Not sure what that means.
Well, they had some student demonstrations going on in opposition to the Vietnam War, and I think other things. And as a matter of fact, some students had gotten killed at a place called Kent State University, and right around that time, I mean, things had really heated up, I think. And so this is actually an old blues tune called Riot in Cell Block Number 9 that was written by Lieber and Stoller, the same guys that wrote a lot of Elvis's stuff. And it was a hit for the Coasters, an old doo-wop group. There's a riot going on. Anyway, Mike took that and just... he used "There's a Riot Going On" part for the choruses, but wrote the verses as Started out as Berkeley free speech, and later on at People's Park. The winds of change fanned into flame, student demonstration spark. So it was Mike's deal on that. It's a great rock and blues track. I don't know if I'm so much about the the message deal, but anyway, second side. I think start second side. Feel flows.
There it is.
I love the fact that it's gained all this notoriety through Cameron Crowe in that famous, or the almost famous movie.
Yeah.
It was used because of that. That song gained legs that it never had.
Right.
And has been. I'm so thankful that happened. It's just a beautiful song. Even just deconstructing it to make a little guitar track and play the violin over the top of it. It was fun.
Yeah, it was
today,
fun to listen to. Yeah.
It's a beautiful song. Again, the Jack Riley lyrics. They're pretty spacey, new agey lyrics on the stuff that Riley's, but that's what's the current stuff,
right?
And
right.
He's trying to make them current. The flute solo on here, Charles Lloyd, who came into the Beach Boys' life, I think via the Meditation World, and it became good friends with Mike Love especially, but he started recording with him and touring with him a little bit, and he's got the flute solo on here, and I love the story where Mike, after they recorded this, Mike said, well, you might not be able to go out on the road with us, or you might not be able to play with us all the time, and we might have another flute player needs to do this. Could you write that down? He says, you can't write that shit down. It's just a jazz improvisational space age flute solo. Totally. I think he's also playing the sax behind it too. It's really cool. I love that tune, and love the fact that the set was named after it.
Yeah. Definitely.
After that is Al's contribution. And Al writes this tune, Looking at Tomorrow, a welfare song, I think is what it's called in subtitles, with Gary Winfrey, who is, we remember that name from Al's days in his folk groups when he was a teenager before the Beach Boys. He was one of the earliest buddies was Gary Winfrey that he played guitar with, and so they got together and buddied up, and Gary got to co-write a track on the Surf's Up album after the Beach Boys are big and famous. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's a fun song, and also in the deconstructions, listening to Al I didn't know it was Al laying down the acoustic guitar track on there, and it's a pretty cool little finger style guitar part that's processed real cool.
Yeah. Again,
thanks to old Steve Desper. Next 3 songs, they're the ending 3 songs of the album, are really kind of they're Brian's tunes. Brian was not involved much with Surf's Up. As a matter of fact, Bruce was upset because Jack Riley wanted to market it more like that Brian was there more than he was. And at the time, Bruce said, to make it look like anything that other than Brian Wilson was just a visitor at those sessions.
Oh, really?
Even Brian's stuff, But that being said, he participated. He's singing all over it, and there's the first song that comes up of these 3 is called "A Day in the Life of a Tree," and he plays the organ on it, and he gets Jack Riley to sing this lyric. And Jack Riley's not the greatest singer; it's kind of a warbly voice, but it sounds like a dying tree. The song is really brilliant. One of Brian's hidden gems, as a matter of fact, and. So that's A Day in the Life of a Tree. Then after that is some people's favorite Brian Wilson song, Till I Die. He was, famously heavily depressed, the stuff during the Smile period. And he was, I guess at certain times during this period, was really depressed. And this is a depressing song. And I think it's Mike that when Brian first played it for them demoed it for the band in the studio, he goes, what a downer.
Yeah.
Why don't we, and Brian, hurt by that, but Carl helped Brian finish it, and it's beautiful. The chord changes, can't even understand it. it's one of those, and it feels like the shifting waves and how small a person really is, and I'm a cork in the ocean,
right,
floating over the raging sea, until I die, and
yeah,
it really feels like all that. Last song is Surf's Up, which the album is named. Well, Surf's Up is not a current tune. It's the Smile song that Brian famously played on the Leonard Bernstein special, and Leonard Bernstein, the classical musician, said this is one of the greatest things to come out of modern music. And then Smile didn't come out. Surf's Up didn't come out. Well, Van Dyke, remember, gets him this new record contract, and he's kind of working in the background here too. As a matter of fact, he sings on A Day in the Life of the Tree and probably does some session work. But I don't know if it's his suggestion, but they wanted to drag Surf's Up and out and put it on the record, and Brian didn't want to. He at first was really adamant. I do not want to. It brought up too many bad feelings, and I'm not sure what the bad feelings specifically about Surf's Up were. Maybe it was the expectations. It wasn't like Fire where a building burned down.
Right.
He thought, but he didn't want it released, and the other guys went and dug the track out and started working on it, and I guess at one point Jack Riley said he was riding with Brian, and Brian said to him, "Well, I'll go ahead if you're going to make me do it. I'll do it." Where nobody had said we're going to make you do it, but he finally, obviously, was going to do it, and it was put on the album. Brian, I think, tried to sing it, but couldn't hit there's some amazingly high notes in this thing, but Carl just kills it. And then they fly in a part from Brian singing it from 1966 on the Smile sessions.
Oh, really?
And Bruce and Carl and Al all dug that stuff out and had to use the stuff from 1966, match it up with the stuff they were doing. They did a fantastic job, and of course with Steve Desper. But that's a signature of the early 70s. A lot of people say this is the end of this album is when the Beach Boys really died.
Oh.
But I disagree. I think there was a few extra chapters that meant something at least.
Right.
But this was definitely the end of the end of an era. Bruce says, "Till I Die" is the last great Brian Wilson song.
Oh.
With all the counterpoint harmonies
Sure.
and all the signatures that are in his music. But anyway, we discussed it. It went to number 29.
Yeah. So, in regards to the actual box set, where's any major highlights on stuff that really kind
of those tracks that we
Yeah.
just mentioned? Man, so much. Every song almost gets that treatment.
really?
Yes, and there's the obvious ones you should check out, but they're all brilliant. I mean, there's a lot of the stuff I'd heard before on bootlegs, but maybe some of the vocal snippets, background vocals in "Day in the Life of a Tree," people haven't heard. There's definitely some of the vocal isolations on "Feel Flows" that I hadn't heard that are wonderful.
Okay.
Disney Girls, the vocals on everything on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just was curious just because I know you said that you had heard some on the bootlegs, but I didn't know if there were moments, in this where you were just,
Oh, almost all
all
of
the
them.
way
I'm
through.
still there's still things jumping out at me, and I've heard it a few times
Yeah,
now. Especially just keep playing it and playing it and playing it, and then a bass line of what that was there.
Yeah.
Oh, what that, just crazy. Yeah. So those are the two albums, and so now we need to talk about the bonus tracks. And I'm not going to talk about anything that we've talked about on the records. I'm going to say, hey, the important ones that aren't part of the records that they've included. And I'm not including everything. But they've got the 1969 single "Breakaway" that was the B-side was "Celebrate the News." That was kind of them getting away from Capitol Records. We've talked about that. But
Yeah.
I know that was the song they were working on that in April and May of 1969. I was born in May 1960.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of nice to know what they were working on then. And actually, this whole "Feel Flows" thing, I've got to bathe in in the Beach Boys, the music that they were making while I was a baby and growing into it's just, and their kids are about my same age too. The same thing was going on with them. Just crazy. But anyway, blah. So we got the breakaway single, Other Side, Celebrate the News. They're fantastic. Susie Cincinnati, which was a Sunflower era piece. When 15 Big Ones came out, and I got it for Christmas in 1976. Had Susie Cincinnati, and they said it was an old track. We finally figured out, okay, wow, they saved that from 6 years ago and put it on this record. So, but it's neat. That happens with that, and also a song called "Good Time" here. It's on the "Love You" album in the exact form. So you're going along here on. It's especially on "Love You" when "Good Time" comes up. It's like you've got these guys that are starting to have ragged voices for a lot of different reasons, and all of a sudden they've reversed 6 years and they're all sweet. Brian's got his young, sweet voice again. So it's kind of a funny moment on "Love You" where "Good Time" comes in. But there's 2 songs there and some others that I'll mention when we get there that were that they had a whole bunch of material they didn't use, and so what they did is in albums, later during the 70s, they'd go back, that was a pretty good one, let's finish that. Cotton Fields, that we've talked about, that Al's production, but he did his hit production that has the steel guitar that went to #1 in England. They were working on that. It's got some great stuff and deconstruction on here. Big Sur, which is a song that ends up being on Holland that Mike wrote all by himself with a guitar. He describes it in the new liners, and he wrote it in 4/4 time. On Holland, it shows up in waltz time, but this has always been my favorite. As a matter of fact, there's a tribute CD where the gal is singing this in the original 4/4 time, and I go, oh my gosh, I wish the Beach Boys would have done it like this. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, they did. That was her template. I just hadn't heard the bootleg yet.
Right.
But this is always, and I didn't know for years that Mike wrote it all by himself, so kudos to this. Is a beautiful song. Big Sur. My Solution, Halloween track. They recorded it on October 31st, 1970. There's pictures of them. They're all in Halloween masks and makeup, nice. And Brian had them record this just caveman crazy thing about a mad scientist that was going to alter the DNA of his dog and all, and got them to participate. That's the Sound of Free is a Dennis single that came out in 1970. It came out, credited to Dennis Wilson. Daryl Dragon, who was later of Captain and Tennille fame, the Captain, he wrote that with Dennis. Or actually, Sound of Free was, Mike wrote the lyrics. And because of Dennis and Mike's relationship, especially going forward in the 70s and up until Dennis's death, it's always ironic to me. There were some beautiful moments when Dennis and Mike worked together. And Sound of Free, I've always loved. It's a fantastic rocker. And I never knew until I read the liner notes for this. Mike says, yeah, it's about meditation. The sound of free is the sound of being, and what? Oh, wow. Yeah. And so that's Dennis and Mike's meditation tunes.
That's
it's
cool.
Just kind of a stomping rock and roll tune. God, Where Is She? A Brian thing that I knew nothing of until a few years ago on a bootleg that was one of those things that go, oh, my God, they keep on finding little nuggets that no one ever now we know, and now it got its treatment on there, but that's called Where Is She? It really needs to be checked out.
Okay.
It's Natural. It's a song that I had never heard. It's written by
You never heard it?
Never heard it.
Wow.
David was written by David Sandler, who the next year or two, Brian worked a lot with David Sandler making an album for his wife and her sister called American Spring. And I think David Sandler was a friend of Bruce's that Bruce just brought up to try to get Brian involved in something, and they did a lot of work, and it's some of my favorite Brian work coming up, and I hope it's part of the next box set. But I've never heard of this tune, and it's credited solely to Sandler, and I knew that Sandler wrote a lot of the music, helped write a lot of the music that he and Brian worked on, but this is a great tune. Mike's singing the lead, and it's a Brian production, but it's with a sick bass line. Sick. Oh,
I'm a sucker for a good bass line, so I need to check
it's a
that
synth bass too.
Yeah.
A sick synth bass. There's a series, a whole lineup of tunes that Dennis did with Daryl Dragon that were kind of experimental things that got recycled as part of his later solo stuff and other Beach Boys stuff, but they're all really cool to listen to. Behold the Night is one I hadn't really heard a lot of before, but the song Cuddle Up that shows up on 72's Carl and the Passions album is here in its original form, which is known as Old Movie, and that's the highlight of that section. Just very, very great music. There's, I didn't mention Breakaway, Brian and Murray. Dad wrote that. There's also another Brian and Murray tune called Won't You Tell Me that they recorded in 71. Okay, Breakaway, 69. This one, 71. What did we talk about happened in 69 that just broke Brian's heart and would make you probably never want to talk to your dad ever again? But here he is even making music with him. You know, he sold the whole Sea of Tunes catalog and said your songs will never, you know, and yet Brian's still willing to work on, or at least I'll tell you what, on Breakaway I think it's legitimate, but I hear on the demo of Won't You Tell Me and even on the track with Won't You Tell Me, you can't tell me Brian is serious at all, and he's mocking Murray when they're making the demo.
Oh, really?
It's at his house, and Murray
really?
says, "This will be the most beautiful thing you got," and he goes, "Ah ha ha," you know, he's just kind of laughing. But I don't know. I've never, Won't You Tell Me, I'd heard that before, but not all this extra stuff with it. The last things of the bonus tracks. You Need a Mess of Help to Stand Alone, the track, and Marcella, just the vocals. These are not tunes from either one of these albums. They would be on 72's Carl and the Passions the next year, but they were started in late 71, and so they were included. When I saw they were the last two, I went, "Well, no, how come?" Because they were in 71. And they're fantastic, and they're two of my favorite songs from that next album, so it's just I guess it's apropos that they were, you know, included. Okay, so after the bonus tracks, I want to mention the live stuff, which they've got highlighted. I'm not going to say much. I like it, especially the early 70s stuff that was done during that period, but they've included some stuff that's like from the late 70s that's the tunes, but they're performed later, and even some stuff in the 80s and the 90s. It's all nice stuff, but it sounds out of place to me on here. And I really like keeping it period, you know.
Yeah,
and so the early 70s live stuff that they're using, to me, that's very satisfying. The other stuff, neat, and I've heard most all of it before. That's basically it about the box set, but I want to get back to, before we let people go, the Bruce signing my Sunflower album.
Yeah, let's hear about that.
Well, the drummer in the Wilson Project, the Beach Boy tribute band I had, his name's Louis McFarlane, a great friend of mine. He was working with a backline company that did backline audio services for concerts, and the Beach Boys were coming through town. I was looking at the set list the other day. I was wondering what year it was. Well, it says 02 on there, so It was 2002. And he said, "Hey, the Beach Boys are coming to the Pavilion." He says, "You want to help run backline with me?" And I go, yeah. So, which is basically like wrapping up chords after the concert.
Sure, yeah.
But they also did cool stuff, like they provided the Leslie organ speakers for the Hammond organs, and like there was a guy, the drummer Mike Kowalski had to have a rock and sock, you know, like there's things on the rider that the backline has to provide. So it was kind of cool to see the rider be in on that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
So we went there early and set up, and I knew so it's it was Mike and Bruce at this time. Al wasn't with them, and Carl had passed away in 98, so it's just Mike and Bruce of the original guys. Brian's doing his own thing. So I thought, Sunflower. So I took that copy of Sunflower, and I had it someplace hidden, but during the concert I had it hidden under a jacket, and or no, it was actually, that was during when we were doing the sound check stuff, because I actually got rid of it before the concert. But I went over beside the stage, and Mike was standing right there, and there was I actually have the set list right here that I cabbaged onto off the mixing board, and here's my my backstage pass for backline services that I wore that night as an official roadie or whatever. So I grabbed this, and I stood right next to Mike, and I would have said something if it would have been the right moment. I would have loved to have shook his hand, but it wasn't. It just wasn't the time to do that, and I don't want to be a germ.
Yeah.
But Bruce was not showing up. Bruce was, and I'm hearing people go, "Is Bruce ever going to get here?" And pretty soon it's almost getting showtime, and here around the back, kind of to the side where that mixing board was, where Mike was standing, I was still right there. Here comes Bruce, and he's got 2 sets of in-ear monitors with him, and he gives one to Mike, and those were new at that time, and so they would just wear them, and that's how they heard themselves sing, and they're brand new, and so he gave one to Mike, and they kind of talked to each other a little bit, and then he walked around the side into the back of the stage, and I thought, boy, this is my moment, and I had that underneath my jacket, and I went back there, and he's back there all by himself, nobody else back there in the dark. I knew it was a sketchy moment to say. I just snuck around there and said, "Hey, Mr. Johnston, it's dark," and he kind of, yeah, and I said, "Hey, I've got this copy of Sunflower. I was wondering if I could get you to sign it," and he kind of looked at me like, "Okay," walked up to me, and he took the pen and signed it, and he looked at me and he goes, "This is the band's favorite record." And I said, "I know, sir. I know."
Nice.
Because I knew even then, well, it's his favorite, and for good reason. And he always says, "Hey, it's weird that the worst selling album in Beach Boy history is my favorite." Well, it's a lot of other people's favorite too. And so that was a fun thing to have happen, and associated with the Beach Boys, and get to run, get to help at a concert. That was I've been to lots of concerts over my life, and we'll talk about that coming up on the late 70s stuff, but that was a cool perspective, just seeing it from that side of things. The other thing I want to say in closing is this has really meant a lot to me the past couple of days as I've been researching this. When I look at the front of the artwork, I see those dates, 1961 to 1971, and those are me and my brother, John Hartz. That I was born in 1969. He was born in 1971.
You said 1961 to 1971. Is that what it is?
1969.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You said 1961 to 1971.
Okay. So
if you want to
start again. Okay. So other thing I want to talk about, over the past couple of days, it's been hitting me about this, and it's really been a visceral, kind of an emotional experience. But I look at the artwork on the front of the Feel Flow stuff, and I see 1969 to 1971, and that's me and my brother's birth years. I was May of 69, and John was January of 71. But it's really special because he was really my buddy of all buddies, who really shared the passion and the music with me growing up in a big way, and shared every one of the experiences that I'm sharing. He knows when we got those records,
right?
And then also having he was in that tribute band with me, and so it's just kind of, I want to give him a shout out, because he's just such a big part of the whole Beach Boys story for me, and I feel like this box set feels kind of, it was because all this music was made when we were babies and were born, it has a certain resonance. And then one last thing, Molly, my little sister, who passed away in a car wreck in 2007, she had found Sunflower early through me, and she absolutely loved it, went and got her own copy. And this was when Sunflower this is in the 90s. And she loved it. She especially loved Forever, but then she also loved Surf's Up. As a matter of fact, she found the song Surf's Up and said, "Have you ever heard this Beach Boy?" And I said, "Oh, yeah. This is amazing." So she had an ear for it, but Forever, Dennis's Forever, was so special that it was played at Molly's memorial.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of this music has real deep
close to home
meaning for me, and man, what a trip I've had just diving into this box set. It's been everything I hoped it would be, and preparing for this episode has been even, I've been really dialed in on how am I going to talk about this, and
well, and you think that we have future box sets.
Oh,
of coming is.
That's what I
So that's pretty
understand.
exciting, right?
I've heard that Alan Boyd was interviewed recently, and he said that there's a surprise coming that's we don't know it, but there's definitely working on the next box set for the next period, which is I'm sure going to be, Carl and Passion in the Holland period. They're saying it's the Holland box set, but I'm just hoping that it all gets the same treatment, because guess what? Through the 70s, they were just like, they have so much unreleased material.
Right.
And I remember seeing a quote from Al years ago, and I wondered if it was true. And he goes, "Oh, we've got 4 times as much unreleased." Maybe that was an exaggeration, but
there's a ton left.
There's a
still.
ton of stuff that people need to hear.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's going to wrap it up, right?
I hope we didn't wear everybody out with the
I'm
field
tired.
flows.
No, we don't know when we're going to launch season 2, but we have been talking about it in a little more detail since you've been doing this, and or since we decided to do this bonus episode. So just stay tuned, and we'll have season 2 rolling here before we know it.
Yeah. Getting those flows. Feel those flows.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon.